Today we're gonna be planting sweet potatoes in grow bags, and my brother's here to help. You can grow your sweet potatoes in mounds in the ground, but if you have a lot of rocks in the ground like we have in our area, or if you have limited space, or if you just want it to be easier, you can get grow bags. I recommend doing a minimum of at least a 25 to 30 gallon grow bag, but here I'm gonna have two 65 gallon ones, and you'll be able to grow a ton of sweet potatoes in these bags. Here are my white potatoes and my red and my blue potatoes that are looking really nice in their grow bags. And I do have a video on this, so make sure you check that one out. Gotta stop and give the chickens a treat. They're scared of bread, apparently. Since these grow bags can hold a lot of soil, if you want to do this in a more economical way, instead of just putting pure soil and compost in here to start with, you can put some cheap topsoil in the bottom, some straw, compost that you made yourself. Banana peels make a really good compost, and so does chicken manure. So use that as a filler in the bottom, but then for the middle and to top it off, use some really good aged compost because potatoes are heavy feeders, and some higher quality soil. You can also add some sand or some peat moss to make it really nice and fluffy, so that way when the potatoes start to grow, they can get a nice size. Whoa! We're gonna put the compost towards the middle of the bag, so that way when we put the potato plants in, obviously they're gonna grow the potatoes downwards because it's a root crop, and then that way it'll be getting a lot of the nutrients from there, since it'll be growing down lower towards the middle of the bag. The Lambert Ocean Blend potting soil / compost also works really well. It's made out of composted shrimp shell, so it's high in calcium, and calcium helps with growth and it helps keep your plants strong and healthy. Oh, and by the way, that shrimp compost works really well for peppers and tomato plants too. Just make sure you smooth out any clumps. You could use a shovel, but I actually forgot it, so that's why I'm doing this at the moment, but I'm gonna go back and get my shovel once I get the plants. The one thing to keep in mind with grow bags though is that they are going to dry out faster than if you were to plant something directly into the ground, so make sure that they don't dry out and they're staying evenly watered. Don't have it like soupy and sopping wet, because then your potatoes are going to rot, but just check the soil, and if it starts to dry out, make sure you water it. Thanks for helping. I'm on my way to get the sweet potato plants now, but I had to stop and admire a lot of the flower sprouts that are coming up for me. I grow and sell local bouquets, so it's really nice to see everything doing well. All right, I got the sweet potatoes. There's lots of different sweet potato varieties. These are just like your standard traditional orange. They're called Beauregard because that was the easiest for me to find in this area. But there's even purple varieties and white varieties. I've been told that the white ones are really, really sweet. All right, so we talked about the compost, which is really important. Now we're going to talk about fertilizer. I always like to remind people plants are living things, and just like us and all living things, they need to be fed. Otherwise, you're not going to get your best results. You don't want to use too much nitrogen. There are 3 numbers on the fertilizer bags, and those stand for your 3 major macronutrients, which are nitrogen, the first number, phosphorus, which is the second number, and potassium, the third number on the bag. Nitrogen helps things grow, so you do need some of that for this to help the vines kick off and get started, but you don't want too much, or else it's just going to focus on growing long vines and not so much on growing the potato. Phosphorus is extremely important for potatoes and sweet potatoes, so I'm going to add some of this at slow release, so that way we can give it even more. It helps with root development, which is really important since obviously potatoes are a root crop. And potassium, the last number on the bag, is basically for all-around health and strength of the plant, which is why we're adding it with the fertilizer and why we also composted some banana peels to help as well. Oh, and like the startup for these may seem like a lot of money because you have to fill it with all the soil. But just remember, in the long run, you only really have to fill it up that much once. Now, each season, I would recommend adding more compost and obviously the fertilizer. But as far as keeping the bags full, the main bulk of that only once. So it definitely will pay its way. Make sure you subscribe so you can follow us along up to harvest time and see how they do. I've done this before, by the way, and they do really well in the grow bags. But I just wanted to mention this since obviously today we won't be showing you the harvest. When it is time to harvest them, use something like this with the gaps in between, because if you just use a plain old shovel and you dig down to scoop up the potatoes and harvest them, chances are you're going to end up like stabbing a lot of potatoes and bringing up too much dirt that's going to spill out of your bag. So use this so that way the dirt can or the soil can fall in between the gaps, and you'll be less likely to be stabbing your plants, or your potatoes rather. Or if you really wanted to, you could just put gloves on and reach your hands down into the grow bags and pull up all the potatoes. I'm also going to be adding some charcoal to this because charcoal helps things absorb the nutrients better, so it'll be good for the plants. This also helps improve drainage, which is really good because, like I said, you don't want the potatoes to get too wet and rot. So your regular potato plants, like your Kennebecs, your Eva potatoes, your reds, your blues, you plant those early spring. They're pretty cold hardy. Sweet potatoes, on the other hand, you can't plant until all danger of frost is gone. They like it warm. You want to space these about 12 to 18 inches apart, and each little plant is going to produce multiple different sweet potatoes off of its little roots. Added some more phosphorus and potassium, and now I'm just going to mix it up nice and evenly. It wouldn't hurt to do this in advance, so that way all the nutrients are going to be available to your plants when the planting time comes. So it wouldn't hurt if you want to do this a few weeks before you're ready to plant. Have everything prepped. But if you're late to the game and you do it all in one day, that's fine as well. Just make sure it's really, really mixed in there. And make sure that what you're using is slow release so it doesn't burn the plants when you put them in here with it. The fertilizer always reminds me of Dippin' Dots. Since I used a slow release fertilizer, this should feed them throughout the season. However, if you want to give them more fertilizer midway through the season, once they start to blossom, that won't hurt. And you can see the soil's nice and fluffy, so it's going to give them a really, really nice way to just put down their roots and grow nice sized potatoes. If your soil was really like tight and compact or really rocky, you would have really small potatoes, or you could risk getting ones that split and look all funky. And you'd be amazed how much these grow bags can actually hold. When we dig these up at the end of the season, or when they're ready rather, it won't be the very end. At the end of their growing season is what I'm trying to say. You'll be amazed at how many potatoes we actually pull out of here. It's going to take these about 90 days to reach maturity, and you'll know it's time to harvest once the vines start dying off. The grow bags I've noticed that they drain pretty well. If you're using a container though and not a grow bag, drill holes in it for sure. And whether you're using a container or a grow bag, I would recommend putting them over stone like I did to help with drainage, or you could put it over a wooden pallet. So again, just remember there's a fine line. You don't want this to dry out completely and get all compacted, because then you're not going to be able to have your potatoes develop properly, but you don't want this soggy and retaining water either. So now they're all planted. I recommend doing this in the evening so that way they're going to be stressed when you transplant any plant. So if you do it in the evening, that way the harsh sun isn't beating down on it and drying it out faster. So do it in the evening so it can adjust overnight when it's nice and cool and dark. Give them a really, really good drink, especially the first couple of days that they're adjusting to this. And don't forget to stay tuned and subscribe so you can follow along with this. Check out the other garden videos that we have, and check back for more. That one has a tail.
And some babies.
There's a bunch of them right on the top.
Looks like a goose.